I have all my notes on it. I have all my notes on it. Oh, I know. Yes.
Welcome to open session of the City Council meeting March 16th, 2021, where we are reconvening from closed session where direction was given and no action was taken. Calling this meeting to order. Madam Clerk, may I have the roll?
Councilmember Riggs.
Here.
Councilmember Hatley.
Here.
Councilmember Goodson.
Here.
Councilmember Pittman.
Here.
Councilmember Smith.
Here.
Vice Mayor Thompson.
Here.
Mayor Reynolds.
Here. Will you stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance? This is being read by somebody else, isn't it? Yeah, you told me, Don or somebody. Salute. Pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Looking for a motion to adopt the agenda.
I move that we adopt the agenda.
I'll second.
Councilmember Hadley.
Motion carries with 7 yeses and 0 nos.
Moving on to presentations and proclamations, we have one proclamation for Arbor Day 2021.
Read it to yourself.
Yes. Good evening, Mayor and Council members. This is our annual proclamation for Arbor Day, and we would like to present it to the city and staff. Arbor Day has been, I'm going to take my mask off, I'm sorry. Arbor Day has been observed throughout the nation and the world for 149 years, whereas Arbor Day was derived from the Latin word for tree, and Arbor Day was conceived by newspaper editor and politician J. Sterling Morton, who proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for the planting of trees. And whereas in 1872, this holiday called Arbor Day was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska. And whereas in 1909, California designated March 7th as the beginning of Arbor Day celebration to commemorate Luther Burbank's birthday, the great California botanist who was born in March 7th, 1849. California observes Arbor Day concurrently with the Conservation Week from March 7th through March 14th. Whereas trees are not just a source of beautification for our neighborhoods and parks, they can also reduce erosion for our precious topsoil by wind and water, moderate the temperature, clean air, produce oxygen, provide habitat for wildlife, and trees are a vulnerable, renewable resource. Whereas trees in our city increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of business areas, beautify our community, and can be a source of joy and spiritual renewal. Whereas this is the 41st year that the city of Oroville has been recognized as a Tree City USA by the National Arbor Day Foundation, and the city desires to continue its tree planting program. Now, therefore, I, or Mr. Mayor Chuck Reynolds, and the city of Oroville, in concurrence with the Oroville City Council, hereby proclaim March 7th, 2021 through March 14th, 2021 as the observance of the Arbor Day celebration in the city of Oroville, and urge all citizens to plant, care for, and preserve trees throughout our community. to enhance the spirit and well-being for our present and future generations.
Thank you. At this time, we're going to open up the meeting to public communication. Madam Clerk, do we have any public that would like to comment on non-agenda items?
Mr. Mayor, I have 2 public speakers that would like to speak on non-agenda items. I have Kay Castro as the first speaker.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and fellow council members. I'm so happy to see you tonight, and that's an exciting way to start it off with the trees. We love all of our trees. Also this weekend, or next weekend, April 3rd, is the Wildflower Festival. So don't forget to put that on your calendars as well. My question or information tonight I'd like to share is on the Measure U meeting that we had last week. It was a very, very informative meeting. I'd like to thank staff for presenting all of the financial numbers to us as a committee and giving us an opportunity to ask a plethora of questions regarding the intent of that expenditure and how those monies were being spent. The most exciting part of all is that in the 12 months of September 19 to August 20th, we came in at $6.479, rounding it to $1 million, which was a lot higher than was expected. So I think that's exciting. And we're right on track for September 20th to December 20th. The numbers that were recorded were 2.45, rounded to 2.45 million. So it's very exciting that we're moving forward. The staff and committee is going to collaborate on a workshop to really prioritize projects. As the bylaws say, prioritize projects and programs, make recommendations to City Council. So we're very excited to serve in that capacity. Thank you very much.
Our next public speaker is the cameraman.
Well, I'd like to share the screen, but I'll just go ahead and read what I have. I have a long updated response to the previous mentioned comments I made regarding the alleged hit and run on November 6, 2020 by an Oroville police officer on Montgomery Street on the right by the southbound off-ramp on Highway 70. Finally got the report back from CHP, very heavily redacted, but on November 10th, 2020, an investigation was initiated. The victim was contacted by CHP, and they had a conversation. Eventually, they went to the scene of the alleged hit and run on Montgomery Street. The officer determined, then it's redacted where he determined, and after the redaction it states, I was unable to locate any evidence on the scene, nor did I observe any cameras which may have captured the collision. On November 10th, later on, the same day, he was contacted by the chief of police by telephone and relayed to him that the chief himself had been made aware of the incident after he was contacted by a city council member who had seen a post on Facebook regarding the incident. The officer was contacted and his statement was given, but that is redacted, so I cannot read that. But ultimately, the end of the report, that's mostly redacted. The only thing pretty much that was done was I booked the various catalogs, incident reports, and the officer's statement into CHP evidence. And there was no arrest made. I don't know what the total outcome, if internally Oroville police have done anything. They previously stated to me that they're not going to comment on this type of incident related to the officer. And with a little time left, I'd just like to briefly mention I was charged $6 for, not $6, but $12, $6 a piece for two pieces of paper for a catalog from the fire department and a catalog from the police department, when previously I've never been charged for a catalog when I requested it from the police department. And you know,
your time is up. I'm sorry.
All right. Sorry. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, that is the last of the public speakers on non-agenda items.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, if we could, on the consent calendar, staff respectfully request to pull item number 5.
Looking for a motion to adopt the consent calendar with item number 5 pulled.
Mr. Mayor, Council, I need to indicate that I need to recuse myself on item number 6, as my wife is the executive director of Catalyst.
I move that we approve the consent calendar, exempt item 5 to be pulled.
I'll second.
Motion carries with 7 yeses and 0 nos.
Mr. Legron, you pulled item number 5. Do you wish to comment, sir?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. Item number 5 is a community block.
Councilmember
before we do that.
Riggs.
Sorry, thank you.
Yeah, no, I'll go ahead.
I'd like to recuse myself. I believe that's necessary at this time, as
Right.
the Axiom is my place of employment.
Correct. That was the purpose of pulling item number 5.
I intended on.
That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Looking for a motion to adopt number 5 on the consent calendar.
So moved.
Second.
Motion carries with 5 yeses, 1 no, and Riggs abstained or recused.
Okay, at this time, we're going to open the meeting up for public hearings.
Mr. Mayor, on public hearings, those are time specific. We cannot do the first one until 5:15. So if the council would not mind, I'd like to go even a little bit more out of order and go to number 12, because I think that that's going to be something we spend a little more time talking about. And then we can come back to 11 if we still have time before 5:15.
Okay, moving on to item number 12, renaming of the Municipal Auditorium. Do you wish to comment on that? Somebody with
Our comments
knowledge?
surrounding that, Mr. Mayor, is that during the remodel of the Municipal Auditorium that we've been undergoing, the neon sign that was on the front had to be removed because of dry rot that was underneath the facade that supported it. It was damaged during the removal, which there's nothing that the construction company could have done any differently that would have preserved that. Well, some of the comments we received along the way as we were updating the facility was that it needed a more modern name. Municipal Auditorium is kind of an antiquated name, and people felt that it needed a new modern name. So hearing that, what we did is we put out opened up I don't know if it was Facebook or our website, and allowed people to offer suggestions for names. So we got several suggestions for names. We are bringing this to you to let you know that we did select a name and we've ordered the sign. It's going to be referred to now as the Mandalorian Auditorium, which I don't know who turned that in, but if they're watching or listening, that was fantastic. That is the best name. They should win a prize just for that. But all kidding aside, we would like our council to review those list of potential names and give us some direction on if you would like to rename the facility, and if so, what would you like to name it?
and we're going to open this up for discussion, but in looking at all the names and speaking to members of the community, I like the name Oroville Convention Center. Does anyone wish? Oh, Councilmember Goodson.
Yes, Chief, we had spoke earlier before the meeting in regards to many people have weighed in as to the Municipal Auditorium being owned by YMCA. And so because of that,
no, the YMCA
could you
does
please
not
clarify who
the
owns
city
the
of
building?
Oroville owns the Municipal Auditorium. We have an operational agreement with the YMCA to provide services out of the auditorium. The auditorium belongs to the city of Oroville.
Thank you for that clarification.
Vice Mayor Thompson.
I'm on the same page with Mayor Reynolds in regards to the Oroville Convention Center, or keeping it as is.
I would favor community center over convention center, but that's just a personal preference. And I thought it would be important also to, since Mandalorian Auditorium got honorable mention, that Little Sebastian and the Corihoney Auditorium should get honorable mentions. I would also be in favor of just keeping it Municipal Auditorium.
Appreciate that. The reason why I had considered convention center more than community center is because we already have a community center, and community indicates smaller to me rather than, you know, where we got a lot of growth going on. And convention, there's some big names of concerts and people that would be interested in playing, and being the lead singer in a band. Oh, wait a minute, that's not me. Being the roadie for a band who had a lead singer. I know that when the band set up gigs, if you would, when we knew we were going to a community center, we knew it was very small. Yeah. And when we were going to a convention center, it was a bigger production. That was my reasoning. There's not one that's right over the other. I'm just simply giving my 2 cents. Councilmember Smith.
Yeah, just a little history. So the Fort Bay Aquatic Center is, you're thinking, what's that got to do with this? So they just recently changed their name to the Feather River Center, and they're going to be in the future building a center, rec center, community center out at the Fort Bay. So again, and that's going to the comments that the mayor made about we already have a community, you know, they have the Southside Community Center. Then to the north, we're going to have the Feather River Community Center. So I think for clarity, I think it needs to be something unique that doesn't create confusion with either one of those entities. I really like the Oroville Convention Center in that it projects a future of, I think, a community that is inviting tourism, inviting something bigger. It's a vision projecting something that we're bigger than we are today. And so I like that. I like that name a lot in what it projects, the image. I think, however, where we are today, community center is probably more apropos for where we are today. So one is, I think, projecting a future that I think where we're going, and one really communicates the message of where we are today. So I'm kind of conflicted, but I like vision. I like casting vision. I like forward thinking. And I think that certainly the Convention Center does the job.
Appreciate that. Councilmember Pittman.
Thank you. Okay. Well, I don't know if you all remember, but it's actually the Oroville Exposition Building. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's when it was built. That's what it was called. And that name didn't stick. Municipal Auditorium didn't stick because nobody knows what that is, where it is. I mean, just to be simple, clearly the name Oroville needs to be in the title. And a convention center actually means a lot of different things. It's not one or the other. I'm kind of leaning toward that, just Oroville Convention Center, OCC, what it'll be called, because everybody abbreviates everything nowadays. I'd also like to see just a cost estimate if this sign that is going to be replaced to the old one might be a digital or, you know, some kind of other, maybe even electronic sign that we could put ad space on that could help sell the activities going on. I'm going to say some would not like the idea of another, you know, digital sign, but I'm going to say we've had a great success story with the State Theater one. And that's been very, people love to see their name on it. I know the high school kids, you know, recognition for different activities. I think that's a really neat idea. And it might be nice to have the same thing on the Oroville Convention Center. I don't know what the cost is. I don't know, maybe it could be, you could have the name on top and then a digital sign underneath that, something like that. Just their options, I think, are, now's the time to do it. We have to rebuild the sign anyway, so it's a good time to do it. So I'd throw my 10 cents out that way.
And if the council would like, we can look into that to see what the cost of a sign similar to that, because I think that'd be a great idea to anchor the other side of town, because we all know what it looked like prior to the new marquee going up, and it really brightened and changed that part of our downtown. So we can certainly look at something like that and bring you back some prices on some sort of a neon display. I think it would make sense if you're going to call it a convention center, so that you can actually advertise what's going to be occurring there and when, so that it's programmable. So the days of plastic letters being slapped on the side of the building, those are gone. So this does make sense. So we can look into that if you would like and bring that back to you. But we probably do need to have a name, because I'm sure there's going to be a component of it where it's either on top of the electronic display or somewhere integrated into it, so they know what to put in there.
Well, and just as part of that conversation, Oroville Convention Center, and then if the YMCA is the leaser, they can add another sign below as their center. I mean, that further makes the identity to it.
Sure, or they could even roll it across the electronic display, the
That too,
YMCA, adult league basketball Wednesdays at 8 or whatever, just to advertise for the community, to help get that out there so they know when these events will be occurring.
Councilmember Goodson.
So I did a little studying of that word usage, convention as opposed to community. So my first question is, what is the square footage of the Municipal Auditorium? 16,000 square feet. The average size of a convention center is anywhere minimum 615,000 square feet on up to 2.6 plus million square feet. So when I think in terms of a convention center, I'm thinking of somewhere that has multi-purpose breakout rooms, that has the capacity to accommodate thousands of people coming into a city, where it is also supported by a major airport, which none of those at the moment, and I understand being a visionary that Oroville has. I believe that using the word convention is a false misrepresentation of the word right now in our community. And so those are my thoughts. Be prepared when people look at a brochure from the Chamber of Commerce that says Oroville has a convention center. They don't want to be disappointed. Those are my thoughts.
Well, we're planning on adding on.
The 600,000.
I said we're planning on adding on.
Wow.
Is there any more discussion on it? I need to ask the public if they have any input. Madam Clerk.
Mr. Mayor, we have one public speaker, Kay Castro.
Good evening again, and thank you so much for this discussion. I am 100% in favor of the word Oroville, no matter what. And I personally still like Oroville Municipal Auditorium, but I did hear what was said. And I am very confused with some of the other names that have Feather River or Table Mountain or the other names in them. So that's why I'm thinking Oroville. I like the idea of a convention center because of the growth opportunity. I really believe having a lot of family come to town, I have a hard time finding hotels for them, restaurants for them, and I'm resourceful. So I think anything we can do to promote the downtown in a bigger way and help our downtown businesses and Oroville businesses in general, including the Oroville Dam and the Feather River, that Oroville Convention Center would encompass that. Thank you.
Are there any more public comments?
Mr. Mayor, that was the only public comment for this item.
Councilmember Goodson wishes to speak.
Yes. So I had a thought in response to what Ms. Castro just stated in regards to liking the Oroville Convention Center, and you said something in regards to challenges with finding hotels, but we do have 2 casinos that can accommodate that type of clientele.
Thank you. Looking for a motion.
I make a motion that we adopt the name Oroville Convention Center.
Looking for a second. I'll second.
The motion carries with 5 yeses and 2 nos.
Mr. Mayor, we will return back to council with an approximate cost or some cost for some different types of signage on the front of the building.
Thank you. Is there any other particular order that you wanted to go in, Mr. Legron?
No, sir, Mr. Mayor. If we could just go back to
regular business.
Go back to item number 10 now and start working our way through.
Moving into regular business, item number 10, authorization to award contract for goat grazing vegetation management.
Good evening, Mayor Reynolds and council members. This evening we have a request to authorize the contract for the goat grazing management services to Blue Tent Farms, doing business as Western Grazers. Staff put out a request for proposal. We received lots of inquiries and questions, but only 2 proposals. One was incomplete, and this was the most complete and conclusive proposal that we received. This also coincidentally is the same grazer that grazed the levee this last spring. So we would like to request moving forward with this proposal. It's a 3-year agreement for $80,000 or $80,010 annually and $240,030 for a 3-year term. And also with the option to renew 1 year at a time following that. So.
Mr. Mayor, just to refer back to the proposals that were received, this was the cheaper of the 2 proposals too. The other one came in at $111,000. Mm-hmm. This will be a Measure U project. This is a safety project for the city of Oroville. It does fuel reduction in various places throughout the city because the goats eat the fuel. It also makes our walkways and trails safer because there's less places for people to conceal themselves and surprise others while on the trails. It also, the goats will be utilized to eat down the excess vegetation inside of retention ponds, which allows them to drain and absorb the water more naturally into the drainage system so that it doesn't flood and cause flooding through the city. So this is a project that is a safety project. It's a public safety project, and public safety dollars will be expended on this.
Thank you. Are there any public comments on this item?
Mr. Mayor, we have 1 public speaker, Bobby O'Reilly.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. Hope you're all having a wonderful day. It's a beautiful sunny day outside. I appreciate the goats. And the reason I say that is because I remember the grand fire that we had, or Bluffs fire, if you will, this last fire season. Was there. I actually was on the fire side of that fire, and then I came across the river to get some footage, and I literally watched the embers float from the fire side of the river across to the bedrock side of the river and land where the goats had been, and the goats grazing literally saved that fire from spreading into downtown. So, as many of you know, you were there, you seen it, I seen it. I wanted to share that experience. I think the goats are wonderful. Thank you to whoever implemented the idea. It's really great.
Mr. Mayor, that is the only public speaker on this item.
Vice Mayor Thompson wishes to speak.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Don. Could you explain more in regards to the specific area these goats will be grazing and maintaining?
Yes, there are 15 locations throughout the city of Oroville that they will be grazing. They are the Feather River Nature Center area, the Basin along Highway 70, and they're all city-owned properties that the goats will be grazing. Deer Creek Estates, Highway 70, I said that. The Buttes subdivision, Argonaut Basin, Olive Highway Basin East, Cala Vista Estates, Hewitt Park, Central Middle School Drainage Basin, the abandoned railroad and miscellaneous properties along that corridor, the airport dog training facility, and the Feather River corridor, which would be the levee corridor from the Highway 70 bridge to the Green Bridge.
So that's a lot more than was done this previous year when they grazed?
More than double. Mm-hmm.
And do we have any kind of analysis of what that would cost if we had city employees to take care of that?
I don't have an analysis. I do know that it takes quite a few months for the employees to reach all of those areas, and sometimes those areas are not reached by the employees in time to get through fire season. So it is very important that we have these areas grazed, especially considering the fire seasons that we've had in recent years.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Councilmember Pittman.
Yeah, I appreciate the discussion, and the city has to meet the same deadline, the June 15th, as all the private property owners have to meet. So it's important that we do at least show that. I think the goats are a great idea. My only question I have on clarity is on number one at the Feather River Nature Center, and I don't know if are we taking the goats up the trail, the Swimboat Trail too, or? No. No.
Only the City of Oroville property.
Okay. The reason I ask that is I recall that we had some kind of agreement with DWR over some maintenance for the Swimboat Trail up to the diversion dam, and I don't know if that is out there or whatever it is, but I couldn't tell if we were doing it because the blue color highlighted that. So it might be a thought pattern because there is vegetation along the river trail, and it may be something to do. And I'd have to look it up, but we had some kind of working agreement with DWR, and I don't remember exactly what it involved, whether it was just road maintenance or
trash service. I know that.
Yeah, trash service.
It was actually they were picking up trash and they were doing additional things because it's a combination-owned area between the city, UP, and DWR. So DWR had an agreement to dump trashes and to do some maintenance in that area. I think one of the things that we could do is possibly partner with them and offer them the opportunity to expand the contract to send the herd up into their area.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, if I might.
Yes.
One of the things that was brought to my attention just a moment ago is the fact that the goats are grazing on city property. There's always a concern whether you live or whether you own property near where public works are being done. This affects more than 10% of the residents of the city. So regardless of the areas that are being de-weeded or what grazed. Mm-hmm. If you live near a property that is being grazed, you do not have to recuse yourself because this will affect more than 10% of the residents of the community.
Mm-hmm. So. Which I want to add too that when you talk about the cost of it, there was an incident on the Argonaut Basin that a city mowing operation caused a fire and caused considerable damage to a number of homes on Canyon Highland. So the goats don't start fires.
Right.
It's a good thing to have.
Councilmember Goodson.
Yes, I think I have a couple of questions. One, I did look at the list of the properties, and the one I can't quite wrap my head around is the 0.6 acre of land. And so how would so I'm looking at this in conjunction with the monies afforded by is it AB 109 for it's the weed abatement program. So are we going to be using manpower and goat power? And how do both of those
We can
coexist?
We'll be using both. The goats will go through and do a vast majority of the vegetation removal, but an example would be down on the river levee. We went back through now utilizing the Hope Center, which is a program we have working through them using transient population, individuals that are trying to work themselves out of their situations. Going back down through there, removing large branches, debris, and things like that. So the goats can do so much, but then we also follow up with our other services to do that as well. There is no AB $109 available, so we are using any dollars that we use on this come from our general fund.
So our weed abatement monies have been exhausted?
There is no fund for weed abatement. Weed abatement is funded through your general fund.
All right.
And as far as, does it, you ask about a 0.6 acre, does it, which page?
0.6 acres.
Page 94, the Highway 70 Basin. Where Mitchell Avenue would shoot straight through across Feather River if you were to go straight over to Highway 70. And there's a small 0.6 acre area there.
That's a drainage.
It's a drainage basin. And so the goats did graze that this last spring. And so they grazed it in about a day because of the quantity of goats.
And so everybody understands when we say a basin, what that is an area in the city that's specifically set up to catch runoff waters. That waters will pool there and then they will be released at a slower rate into our drainage systems or be absorbed into the ground so that we don't get sudden flooding because of water sheeting off of property. And there's various ones of these located throughout the city.
Thank you, Don.
Thank you.
Councilmember Smith.
Yeah, so when do the goats plan, or when does this project plan to underway?
It's weather contingent, so our public works supervisor will be working closely with the operator or the goats supervisor, I guess, and sorry. And so they will determine when to deploy. And this year he will be bringing 1,200 goats, and if not one, maybe two herdsmen to divide and conquer, I guess we can say.
Not to get too deep in the weeds, but and no pun intended, of course. But when it comes to any of us that had property around here, and you do your weed eating, typically you have to do it a couple of times because the rains continue to. So I'm just thinking if they start in one area and by the time they get done, if it's too early, it seems to me, because I know sometimes weeds get happier when you cut them.
Right.
So I don't know if there's any talk or conversation about maybe they'd have to come back and redeploy in some areas because this can take, I imagine, several months to do this. So there may be some regrowth. And I just don't know if that conversation's happened or you've considered that.
It's really about timing.
Councilman Smith, yeah, we've had those conversations, and we're not going to have the goats until such time as we believe that we're not going to get any more growth from our weeds, so the goats come through. And this won't take months. I was amazed how fast they moved last time. This will just take days. It's amazing what 1,200 goats can do.
Okay, great.
So, looking for a motion to authorize staff to award the bid and sign a contract for 1,200 goats.
I so move.
I'll second.
Moving on to item number, sorry. Councilmember Goodson.
I just have one quick question for Don. So I kind of did some research on goat grazing. It can go deep, and you said there's how many?
1,200.
1,200 this year.
600, so that would be double. A day it could go up to like $725, right? So when you look at the 80,000 per year divided, what is that savings cost per day?
I haven't done the math on that.
I'm venturing to say
I'm not following the question. The saving cost per day for what?
And what's the average amount of time on a concentrated basis? How many days per month, per season?
It depends on the terrain. It depends on the vegetation and the quantity of goats. And I'm assuming the age of the goats as well. But all things will factor into that.
Okay.
And I think each year, too, they're going to move faster because I think the first year there was a lot more growth that they had to eat. And I think we'll get a more thorough cleaning of vegetation this year because there'll be less material because of the last year's pruning, essentially, that went on.
So the levee will probably be cut down on time because they already grazed it this last spring. And they grazed it down pretty low to the ground.
So would not that price go down?
It depends on the amount of time. I think what they're going to do is what we're going to get is instead of push them through as fast as they can go, that they may spend a little more time in each area, which means we're going to get a more thorough cleaning of that area. A good example would be is down on the levee itself. The goats actually somehow got out onto some islands that they weren't supposed to. So I think with more time there, they're going to migrate themselves out there and clean those islands that are out there in the water a little more thoroughly. So I understand what you're saying about less fuel load, going faster, less time with the goats here. I think we're going to get the same amount of time. They're just going to spend more time in other areas or in those areas.
So we'd be potentially getting more bang for the buck. Okay.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Yes.
Is there any way that anything can be added to this list? Because what I'm thinking about, that drainage ditch that runs behind Score down through there, that floods sometimes when we have real, and it's a mess to clean. I know that they've had a real issue in there in years past, and it's been a real nightmare to try to get in there and try to get equipment in that ditch. You're just not going to do it. I was just curious about that because that was an area of restriction through there that they've had quite a bit of problem with.
Councilman Hatley, yes, we can add Dry Creek to that, and what we'll do is we will ask for the herder or grazer to send an amendment, and if it's within my purchasing authority based upon this conversation, I will sign the amendment to the agreement to have Dry Creek also aid out.
I was just curious because I know it's been a problem in the past, and I didn't see it on here. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Motion carries with 7 yeses and 0 nos.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 11, accept the California Governor's Office of Emergency Services, CalOES, Hazard Mitigation Grant Program, number 4407-257-147F, and assign an authorized agent and grant contract. Do we have any public input on this item?
Mr. Mayor, I have not received any public comment on this item.
Do we have any comment from this dais? Because what I would recommend is that for code enforcement, we create a standalone department. And I would like to direct staff to develop the department to include a new department head and begin recruitment, because code enforcement is becoming a very big item in our community.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, code enforcement does do a lot of work, quality of life issues around town, abatement of litter, towing vehicles, different things like that. This particular grant does include 8 new temporary employees for up to 36 months. Anybody hired underneath this grant will be notified that this is a grant-funded position at the end of 36 months. That position could go away. If we have the funding for it, we will continue the position if it's valuable and needed. If we don't, we'll probably have to adjust the size of the department. This grant will also include a planner and individuals in building and also code enforcement, and I think Dawn can provide you a little more information on this.
Yes, to follow up with what Bill said, this grant application is for 4 code enforcement technicians, a staff assistant, a planner, a building inspector, and a procurement specialist.
And so what that would do to your code enforcement department, that would give you 7 code enforcement technicians, and if the council directs on the department head, that would give you a department of 8 people in code enforcement.
Great. Looks like there are no more comments from the dais. I'm looking for a motion. Oh, Councilmember Goodson.
Thank you. So here's my question, because when I look at hazard mitigation grant program, and I look at, see, when I'm trying to view this through the lens of the public, and so when you put forth that you're going to hire additional staffing to equip code enforcement department, they're thinking residential and all those abandoned and burned out and debris infested fields and homes are going to be now taken care of because there's more boots on the ground. So can you speak into that?
Absolutely. So this is for residential and commercial. This is to help abate those properties so that new dwellings can be built there. This is to help our community clean up, and especially following the campfire. That was really the intent. Following the campfire, we had such an influx of residents to our community that we there was RVs, there was people camping because we didn't have the locations for those newly relocated residents to dwell. So this is going to clear up some of those blighted properties, hopefully to make them sellable, or clear the lots, sell the lots, and that will also help our community to regain itself and to accommodate all these new residents.
And I think that Councilperson Goodson, to answer your question, that to add to Ms. Never's comments, this department is going to address specifically those issues. What's happened to code enforcement in the past, it's kind of been passed around from this department to the next department to the next department and hasn't actually really found a home anywhere. And it's been kind of, it's like a stepchild that kind of just keeps bouncing around. And it's a very important part of what we do. So yes, this money will allow us to aggressively address those topics. I think the point of having it being a standalone department is so that it don't get sidetracked on other issues.
And it'll help us address those issues on a proactive basis as opposed to a reactive basis as we are now.
So, thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, were you done?
Yes.
Councilmember Hatley.
I hadn't finished.
No. Okay, so I don't understand. Are you done?
I haven't finished.
You haven't finished?
Yes, thank
okay.
you.
Sorry, Councilmember Hatley.
So if we're going to pursue these properties, et cetera, aggressively, what I hear you saying is that we're talking about a change in code enforcement policies, making it more stringent, enforcing. Is that a piece of this?
Not a change in policy. When I say proactive as opposed...
Hold on. When it comes to the landowner and the homeowner,
I think if you create a department, right now you have something that's just kind of evolved. You never have created a standalone department that stands on its own. Part of what we'll be doing on this is I'm working with Mr. Huber, and he'll be sending, I believe we'll be getting another attorney also one day a week who specializes in code enforcement, who is going to help us build those streamlined processes and expedite those issues. Because we all know we've had blighted properties, and it just seems to take forever to get anything done with them. So we want to build this program so that it's effective and efficient. Even if we have to reduce the number of employees in there eventually, we still want a program that addresses these issues, because blight is one of the biggest issues that we have in our community, and it's one of the things that impacts more people in our community by no fault of their own. I mean, if you got a neighbor who is just, quite honestly, brings a lot of garbage to their house, you know, that's really not your fault, but you are impacted by the vermin. It is an attractive nuisance to children in neighborhoods. It's something we have to address. So yes, we want to build this program so that it is effective and efficient, and not just kind of keep relying up. We kind of just are chugging along, doing what we've always done, because that's what we've always done.
Right. Thank you so very much. I'm glad we had that discussion. I apologize, Councilman Hatley. I just wanted to get all that out.
Okay. Who currently oversees that?
Code enforcement?
Hmm?
It's Ron Belser.
Okay. Who's he work for?
Oversees code enforcement in general. So code enforcement is a part of the building department and it's a part of the police department. So I oversee the building department currently, and Chief Deal oversees.
And Councilman Hatley, that's one of the big problems that we have is, you're trying to answer to two different parts of our organization that have two totally different missions. I mean, so when you have that issue going on, it's you can't serve both departments well.
Okay. So we create another department with a department head and whatever else is going to be needed there, and this grant is for 3 years, and after that it may go away or it may not, and we're always talking about our liability as far as PERS and all and everything else, our medical and everything else that we're trying to look at right now and save money, apparently. So adding another layer of government just seems a little, I don't know, seems a little odd to me if we're going to do that right now till we get other things straightened out. I understand hiring the 3 or whatever it is and do this for that 3-year grant, but kind of leave it the way it is, because you add another department head, you add a lot more. I mean, the department head alone is going to be a pricey little expense there for it. Right. So to me, I'm not real comfortable with that right now as far as making it another department. We look at it for 3 years and then say, well, this is what we need, or somewhere in between there. I mean, you can always revisit it. There's nothing that says it's either today or never. So that's just my thought on it.
Right.
Thank you.
Councilmember Pittman.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that. And I hear the words Councilman Hatley saying too. I'm not really interested in hiring a department head for it, because that invokes the city council get involved in that process. And this needs to happen quicker than that. And it's really not what I envisioned you could do. You could have a manager of code enforcement, and that could be easily within the purview selection of the city administrator, and or that's a subsection of what we're going on, because we need to make this thing move fast. Essentially, too, the other thing is every member of the city is a code enforcement officer, and the real question is, how do you get the enforcement done? So if a police or fireman see something, they've got to refer it to somewhere. And that's the big value that I see here, is that it can be followed up on. Last I checked with our kind of blight code enforcement, he had at least 500 open cases. So clearly the workload is over what any one or two individuals can even handle. And streamlining the enforcement process, I think, is an important part of it. I'm great. The grant's a wonderful opportunity to help go after problems. And I think more of a middle manager position, or even a contract manager that might be a retiree that would be brought back, that has extensive experience in code enforcement. Those are options that I'd like to see, if possible. I don't even know if there's any out there, but especially if you're looking at a short-term 36-month period, having that so that you really, get the best bang for your buck. The problem is enforcement, and that's where you're going to see a lot of things. There's going to be a lot of boots on the ground. It just bothers me that we have so many complaints and we just don't have follow-up on it. And it definitely needs to be in one office, one space, under one direction. I just don't want to use the word department head, because that creates a whole nother layer. And maybe down the line, after 3 years or 4 years, it looks to be that, and maybe that's a discussion to have. But at this point, I think we want to use the grant dollars best we can, and that's more inclined to what I'm thinking as a suggestion.
I'm hearing what you're saying, Councilman Pittman, and I think that in order to control cost, it would be an internal hire, so it wouldn't be an all-new cost. I would just remind everybody, code enforcement isn't going to stop in 36 months. No. We don't reach the end and we're finished. It's going to have to continue. We have to really get this on a service delivery level that is consistent so that we can consistently combat these issues, because we aren't going to fix a lot of our problems. We're going to manage them, and we have to have consistent management from our city. So I do hear what you're saying.
Let me add to it, the part I forgot about is we already have enough tools and codes that we already have, so I'm not really interested in changing or adding anything.
Yeah, no.
We've got a ton of things that are out there that are tools to do it. We just don't have the people on the street to get them done.
And that's exactly it, adding the bodies.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Thompson.
Thank you. Yeah, my main comment is just in regards to, I think the item 11 today is just to receive the funds, right?
Yes.
So some of the discussion seems a little ahead of the game here, but yeah, that's my comment.
Okay.
To comment on that, it's I would like to see us move forward, because I work closely with a lot of these departments, and because in case people haven't seen my truck, I'm here every day interacting with different departments, and I know what's going on, and it's an overwhelming load, and Mr. Legrone I agree with his comments that you've got 2 or 3 different people that are supposed to be in charge, but we don't. There's just enough gray area to go around that we're going in circles. Mm-hmm. So I think in order to save money, we have to dedicate money. Mm-hmm. Councilmember Goodson wishes to speak.
Yes, Bill, there was something that you had just said in your last, I'm going to say, argument. What I heard you say is that code enforcement isn't going to go away in 3 years.
Yes, ma'am.
And so that brings to mind how, that being said, we will still have to figure out how we're going to sustain these positions after 3 years. Now, I know, as Councilman Thompson said, this is not this is not the agenda item, but it still has to be in the back of your mind. Once you made the statement, code enforcement is not going to go away in 3 years, you still have to look into the future as to how we will be sustaining, which comes up Councilman Hatley's argument. So,
well, where we're at with our code enforcement department right now is we fund 2 positions. We have one. We fund 3, actually 4 positions in code enforcement already. So what the plan would be is, as we approach this 36th month, of course, we'll be looking and seeing what our finances are at the time. If we have the money to support it, great. That makes it easy. We would have to go to the general fund and support it through the general fund. If we don't have those dollars, the individuals that are hired under those grants will be notified and they will be laid off. We will reduce the department effectively by half, but we will still have 4 code enforcement people that are still available to continue the efforts of code enforcement.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you.
Are there any other comments? Councilmember Smith.
I was just going to agree with what we probably just need to move on with this item, because I think we're all in agreement. We want the money. I think the staff has heard probably enough comments. I mean, I think there's merit in all the comments that are made. I'd just like to go ahead and move forward with the...
I'm looking for an adoption to adopt resolution number 8928 with the to create the standalone department and recruit a department head.
I make a motion that we adopt resolution number 8928.
With the amendment?
With the amendment.
Give her a second. I will second it.
That department head just throws me.
The motion fails with 4 noes and 3 yeses.
So we don't accept the money either.
Mr. Mayor, staff would request that we reconsider the item with a different motion.
I make a motion to adopt item number 11 as written.
I'll second that motion.
I'll vote that motion.
The motion carries with 7 yeses and 0 noes.
Moving on to item number 13, California Department of Public Health proposed change overriding local authority to regulate syringe exchange programs.
Mr. Mayor, respectfully, can we go into our public hearings now? We have people that are online that are waiting to do those public hearings, and go back to number 8 and 9.
Do you think this item number 13 is going to take that long?
I don't know. I don't believe it is, but I'm unsure.
At this time, at 5:38, we will open the meeting up to public hearing. Item number 8 is consideration of public hearing on issuance of tax-exempt bonds for the Oroville apartments and resolution approving the issuance of bonds.
Good evening, Mayor Reynolds and Council Member. Tonight we have James Hamill from California Statewide Communities Development Authority here to present the public hearing for 2 TEFRA hearings, both for Oroville Apartments and Oroville Manor Apartments.
Good evening, Mayor, members of Council. James Hamill, Managing Director with the California Statewide Communities Development Authority. We're here tonight on 2 matters. One, the first for Oroville Apartments. This is a public hearing for the issuance of tax-exempt bonds by our authority, the California Statewide Communities Development Authority. We're a joint powers authority that the city of Oroville is a member to. Those of you who are on council, we were before you 2 years ago for the Sierra Heights project, and this is a refinancing of an existing project, Oroville Apartments, 62-unit affordable multifamily housing project at 37 Nelson Avenue, and the financing will be approximately $6 million. This is really a procedural item that the federal tax code requires, and our joint powers authority requires that if we do anything in your backyard, you will know about it and you will approve it. The city has no liability for the bond issuance. You are not listed on any of the documents. These are bonds issued by our authority itself, and the developer is responsible for all payments on the bonds itself. So at this time, I'm happy to answer any questions the council may have, and will request that the hearing be conducted and approve the resolution for the issuance of the bonds.
Do we have any questions from the public on this item?
Mr. Mayor, it does not seem that there are any public comment speakers on this item.
Councilmember Pittman wishes to speak.
Yes, Mr. Can you tell us the age of the facility that we're talking about today?
Let's see. I don't have the exact age of the project itself. I know it's at its 15-year refinancing point, so it is older than 15 years, but I don't have the exact age of it.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions from the dais? Having none, looking for a motion to adopt resolution number 8930.
I move that we adopt resolution number 8930.
I'll second.
The motion carries with 7 yeses and 0 noes.
Moving on to item number 9, consideration of public hearing on issuance of tax-exempt bonds for the Oroville Manor Apartments and resolution approving the issuance of bonds.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Same presentation, just for a different project. This is a 72-unit affordable senior multifamily project located at 2750 Lincoln Boulevard. Same terms, everything I outlined before. The one thing just to add is that for both of these financings, including this one, this will extend the affordability of these units for another 55 years. So it keeps the regulatory agreement on the property for a long period of time for the tenants and future tenants within the city. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions council members may have.
Are there any questions from the public on this item?
Mr. Mayor, there no one raising their hands wishing to speak on this item at this time.
Any questions from the dais? Having none, looking for a motion to adopt resolution number 8929.
I move that we adopt resolution number 8929.
Councilmember Goodson.
Yes. I'm sorry. Thank you.
The motion carries with 7 yeses and 0 noes.
At this time, we will close the public hearings at 5:44. Moving back to regular business, item number 13, California Department of Public Health proposed change overriding the local authority to regulate syringe exchange programs.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. What you have before you this evening is your consideration of authorizing a letter of opposition to the California Department of Public Health for proposed changes to the California Code of Regulations, Title 17, Section 7,000, 7002, 7004, and 7014. In March of 2020, the Oroville City Council had received numerous complaints regarding the illegal disposal of hypodermic syringes in and about the city of Oroville and in many public places. The council took up this issue, and on April 7th of 2020, the council approved an ordinance banning syringe exchange programs within the city of Oroville. This has not only happened in Oroville, but it's happened in many surrounding communities. Butte County has recently done it as early as last week to ban syringe exchange programs. The California Department of Public Health has apparently taken issue with this and has decided that the best and most appropriate way to deal with this issue is to remove the authority of local municipalities to govern themselves. What they're suggesting that they do is they do a very simple change. They go deep into the book, and they find where it says in the law that compliance with state laws and regulations and local ordinances is what it currently says, be struck out. What they're striking out is the part that says and local ordinances. What that effectively means is that the state California Department of Public Health can authorize a syringe exchange program in your community, and there's nothing you can do about it. You have no regulatory authority over that. So what we are suggesting that we do at this point is that we write a letter of opposition. I've given you each a copy of that letter that I have written. If you like, I can read that. And then I would like to get input and feedback from each of you, and then would like to know, would you like me to, if we do decide to send that, would you like me to sign it on your behalf? Or would you like me to add signature lines for all of you and you all can sign it? We can send it to the California Department of Public Health. And is that enough, or do you wish to do more? The real objectionable thing here that I see in this, regardless of how you feel about syringe exchange programs, the real problem that I see is that the state is attempting to subvert your local authority to regulate your community. I mean, that is a much bigger issue to me than the syringe exchange program. I do not like the idea of the way that they were currently being done. I think that these done appropriately in a medically supervised manner may be helpful, but what was going on, as I was informed in our area, was not there was nothing that I believe that was coming out of that benefited the greater good of all of the community. So with that said, if you like, I can read this letter, or you can give me your input and thoughts. If you'd like me to change it, add something to it, I will make sure that the language, or I'm sorry, the there is no bad language in here, but the grammar is cleaned up and that everything is punctuated appropriately prior to issuing it.
I think we'd like you to read the letter for the public, Mr. Legrone.
Okay. The letter is from the City of Oroville. It's dated March 16th, 2021. It's to the California Department of Public Health, to Dr. Thomas Aragon, Director, in Sacramento, 1616 Capitol Avenue. It's regarding opposition to Department of Public Health 18-015 Syringe Exchange Program Regulatory Consistency. Dear Dr. Aragon, it is after careful deliberation that we respectfully expressed opposition to amendments to California Code of Regulations, Title 17, Section 7000, 7002, and 7014. The proposed amendments have little to do with the syringe exchange program and more to do with the attempt to remove the ability of local government to adopt ordinances to regulate their communities. Locally elected individuals are better informed to make local decisions. What may work for one community may not work for another. To assume one size fits all or we know what is best for any community is an overreach by the state of California. If we are to adopt this thinking, it stands to question why even have local government. To the question of syringe exchange programs, the City of Oroville has never had an exchange program, but was impacted by a program in a neighboring city. The impact was the illegal disposal of syringes in our streets, parks, public property, and on private property. The issue seems to surround the fact that exchange programs are not in fact an exchange program, but more of a syringe handout. It is well documented in this area that many more syringes were given out than were taken in for disposal and destruction. The City of Oroville has provided a safe disposal location for both prescription medication and hypodermic syringes. The prescription medication disposal sites are well utilized, while at the same time the hypodermic syringe disposal site is often underutilized. The impact of a syringe exchange program and illegal disposal of syringes not only utilizes our public safety resources, but jeopardizes the health of unsuspecting community members who inadvertently prick themselves with an illegally disposed of syringe. The City of Oroville strongly advises that this maneuver to subvert local authority be abandoned and a more collaborative effort be sought. The effort should include local authority input and regulation, along with a plan that truly supports the idea of medically supervised syringe exchange. Thank you for your time and consideration. And then we would sign it, either the council members can individually sign it if you choose, or I can sign it on your behalf.
Thank you. Do we have any comments from the public on this item?
Mr. Mayor, we have two public speakers. The first speaker is Bobby O'Reilly.
Thank you once again, Mr. Mayor, Council. A real quick question, Bill. Did you write that letter?
Yes, sir, I did.
Not that you seek my approval or acceptance or anything, but I want to say bravo, spot on. Every bit of wording in that letter hit the nail on the head. As somebody who went and experienced watching the needle giveaways in Chico, and I'm glad you used the word a needle handout rather than exchange program. As somebody that went and watched that process and how it worked, how it was conducted, and ultimately fought against it, even though Chico wasn't my city, it's our community, and it was coming here, and it will continue to come here if we don't stand up and put a stop to it. As we all know, the county supervisors, they weren't able to put a ban on it until recently because their advice was that they could not. They kept being told that they could not put a ban on it. Well, that turned around and they were told that they could, and they did. I think with Scott Huber, he's a wonderful law understander, if that's even a word. But with his expertise, I think that that you guys will do amazing things with keeping this out of our community. And I personally want to say thank you for keeping this out of our parks, out of our community. Myself as a parent with 6 children, I appreciate it tremendously. There was a lot of us from this community that fought against this program, not for what they're doing, but for how they were doing it. Thank you.
The next speaker is Kay Castro.
Good evening again, Mr. Mayor and Council and staff. I would like to support you 100% in this effort. My question is, if there is a Butte County ban, should we cite that and or I've heard about the fighting against the programs. Was there ever a city ordinance or anything formally adopted by our city that we could reference in the letter as well?
We currently have a ban on hypodermic syringes that went into effect in April of 2020.
She's asking if you can reference it in the letter.
Oh, I think that, we certainly could reference that in the letter. We never had a program here. I mean, we certainly set it up so we couldn't have one here. That was mentioned. I mean, we can certainly add the wording in there that we don't have that. I think just personally, to me, the bigger issue is somebody coming in and not allowing my council to make rules and regulations for this community. I believe you 7 were elected by this community. You know it better than somebody sitting in Sacramento that is making a general rule for everybody. And I want to make sure that that we don't lose sight of that, because it's easy to get wound up into the emotion of this and about the necessity of providing clean syringes and things like that. And I don't want to go down that path. I mean, I think that a medically supervised program by a doctor is probably appropriate, but to go the other way. But I certainly could add that language in there if that is something that the council would recommend.
I just think that I want to give us that local control, and if we've already decided that we don't want it, I was just thinking of some way we could reiterate the strength we have, that we as a community already said we don't want it, and here's how we reflected that. Thank you for including it somewhere. I think you've got it. Thank you.
In the 3rd paragraph, we could certainly add in there that the city of Oroville currently has an ordinance banning syringe exchange programs within its jurisdictional boundaries. I mean, that would be a simple add.
To be candid, if I might, Mr. Mayor, as Scott Huber, City Attorney, I would not add it, and I'll tell you why. From a strategic standpoint, there are too many communities that have decided they don't want this. That's why the state is doing this. They're trying to jam this down your throat, and if you say, we have done it, we have banned it, they're going to use us as the poster child of, see, this is the reason why we need to remove local control. And I would, from a strategic standpoint, I would just keep beating the drum of local control. And I want to also, there's something unique that we did, and it was intentional. Technically, you did not ban needle programs. We did not allow needle exchange programs in any zoning area. Mm-hmm. So that if someone wants to do a program, they have to come and apply for a variance. They have to stand at this podium and tell you exactly what they're going to do to implement that program. And one of the things that you could do at that point is say, one of the restrictions is we want to mandate the exchange. You don't give a needle unless you get a needle. That's up to you. You could do that, right? We didn't ban it. We just didn't allow it in any zones, in no zoning in the city. So it's a little bit of a nuance, a little bit of a quirk, but that was intentional. And anyway, I'm at this point just rambling, but I would strategically not include anything about what the city has done. I would just beat the drum of local control is necessary. We know what's going on in this community. We can control it. And I will say this, to be quite candid, there are plenty of places where individuals can exchange needles at health clinics, the fact that you have prohibited it, you only prohibited it from non-medical facilities. Medical facilities can, I mean, if someone has, a diabetic, they can give them a needle. It can happen at the hospital. There are plenty of places where this can legitimately happen. It just can't happen out of a storefront in a non-medical setting.
Thank you. I'd like to comment on that too. There was a lot of, no pun intended, a lot of hype about the needle thing last year. At no time, I want to be very clear about this, at no time did anyone on this council or anyone that I spoke to in this community agree with needle handout programs in Oroville. So there was no minds to change. There was no protests to be given in Oroville where people's minds were changed. That simply did not happen. That was not the case here. This was always a unanimous attitude to protect our community. And when we heard about it going on in a neighboring community, immediately we went to work on developing avenues to protect our community. No one was vacillating or on the fence or anything else. I want to be very clear about that. Mm-hmm. Oroville was completely different than our neighboring community with the previous council. Vice Mayor Thompson wishes to speak.
The only thing I would like to say is that I would like to have a spot for a signature on that as well.
Okay.
I think it'd be more potent if it has council member signatures on it than just one. Nothing against the authority of your signature.
I'm fine with that. I didn't know how to end that, if you would like to sign it or if you'd like me to. So I will add signature lines for all of the council members if that is what you would like.
That's what I would like. I'm done.
Councilmember Pittman.
Thank you. I've had some talks with some of the folks that had to clean the portable bathrooms in Chico, and especially in the park, and it's just horrendous what they went through just trying to O&M those porta potties, if you will. I'm wondering, to the city attorney, is there a way we could address this too as an unfunded mandate to tell us that, by the way, we're going to have to clean these things up if you tell us this program has to exist?
There are a couple of avenues. One is environmental, that they have to take care of the environmental damage that this causes with all the cleanup and all the,
right,
all the discarding of what essentially is hazardous waste. That's one of the avenues. I don't know that you could call it an unfunded mandate because they would likely be funding the programs themselves,
yeah.
the companies that would be doing the programs. But that's possibly one of the areas we could go after is if you could trace those needles back to the provider. There's certainly nothing that would, I think, at that point you would be looking at some pretty serious code modifications, such that any provider that hands out a needle is required to pick it up or pay to have it picked up if it's found on the street. And then you can, have citations issued and fines issued and all kinds of again, that's getting down the road. That's getting down the road quite a ways, and I hope we don't get there.
I think I can help with that question. They have thought this through very thoroughly. If you read part of what they propose, one part of it says that no part of this will be considered a unfunded mandate.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they've thought well in advance.
The other thing that just is an awareness issue, we just have to be out in the wildlife area, along the river, like miles out. And we turned over 2 rocks, just accidentally. 5 syringes were stored there, out in the middle of nowhere. And you talk about how invasive it is, and just think of, enjoying our recreation areas, state wildlife area, and you roll a rock over and you got needles all over the place, out in the middle of nowhere.
Or we have visitors here. visiting our area, enjoying our recreation.
It perpetuates the whole problem. And I'm not beating a dead horse, but clearly this needs to not happen. I would also entertain if any cities take legal action. I would like to hear, that happen, and maybe we could join that if that happens.
We will keep an eye on that, and if there is something somewhere where we can get an amicus brief or something like that, and we will certainly convene the council to get authorization to do any sort of action like that. But we will keep our eyes open for that.
Councilmember Smith.
Yeah, I'd just like to express that I've had a similar conversation with the Chamber Board. And we will be drafting a similar letter, especially with the concern of local control. That's a huge value that I think should be of concern to everyone that lives in any city in our state.
Are there any other comments from the dais? I think what we're looking for, Mr. Legron, I think it's the wishes of this council. I think your letter is right on point. I really appreciate your integrity in creating this. And I just think that the council, if I'm not mistaken, would like opportunity to have a signature on it as well.
Yes, sir. Then what I'll do, I believe I'm seeing consensus of that with the council, and I will prepare the letter. I will prepare signature lines, and then we'll have Jackie follow up and set up times for everybody to get a signature on that.
And just so the record is clear, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to get a motion and a second on
Absolutely.
that direction and a vote.
So having no further comments, we're looking for a motion to authorize the issuance of the letter of opposition.
I move that we authorize the issuance of a letter of opposition, inclusive of each council member's signature.
I'll second that.
Motion carries with 7 yeses and 0 noes.
Moving on to council announcements and reports. Do we have any announcements from the council?
Yes, I have one. Oh, let me put it on the request. I'll go in line here. Excuse me.
I think you were there before me.
Councilmember Goodson?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Kay spoke on this earlier, but I just wanted to piggyback and just reiterate the Citizens Oversight Advisory Committee. We had a very aggressive dialogue, which resulted in the committee moving forward with presentations from each department head in regards to the budgetary expenditures for the Measure U funding. Looking forward to that. Next, last night, the Butte County NAACP, we do have a branch here, and we meet every third Monday of the month. I invited, our keynote speaker was Superintendent Corey Willenberg. And as we know, because of the Attorney General's findings in 2020, there was a very high suspension rate and disciplinary actions that affected the people of color, the communities of color, and those that are disabled. So he gave a very detailed PowerPoint presentation of activities that are moving forward with corrective actions that have been passed down by the general attorney. There is a supportive school climate advisory board that is a part of what the Attorney General has asked to be implemented, and I do sit on that board. So it's very, very favorable. The community hasn't really heard much of what's going on. We're still working out. We're still in the preliminary stages, but we are moving forward in a very positive actions. I also want to, I sit on the Juvenile Justice Delinquency and Detention Commission board. I'm bringing this up because every year we have to inspect all facilities in Butte County that house juveniles, and we have to make sure that the logs are in compliance with the state mandates. And I appreciate, shout out to Chief Joe Deal and to Lieutenant Zarate, Gil Zarate, for keeping very excellent records. Those logs are very important, and they ensure that our juveniles are being provided for and kept away from adult offenders. So thank you very much.
Councilmember Riggs.
Yeah, please. Yeah. One to council. No, I don't need one.
Is it my turn?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to give an update from downtown Oroville, as I'm the committee assigned to that. They did resume their First Friday events beginning in March with the tradition of small town hospitality, but also with the COVID considerations in place. The next one would be the spring fling, which will be April 2nd. And then they're also moving forward with a farm to table dinner, which will be a little different than previous dinners, but that will be April 17th. And then finally, previous council meetings, I've discussed the community needs assessment that downtown Oroville has done. That data collection period is done. We've received 606 responses. So that puts us over the minimum needed in order to have statistically significant results. That data is currently being analyzed and then being compared to industry standards and research in order to create recommendations for our downtown business district. That's all.
Thank you. Councilmember Pittman.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. First off, the Oversight Committee minutes are attached as in the agenda, and I just wanted the council to see the discussion that's going on, the participation in so many different agencies, and the fact that there is probably some really good work being done on communicating the issues. In particular, a lot of the mitigations for Highway 162 that is a critical roadway to the upper mountain area. If the erosion wipes that out, as it did once before, we lost transportation to there almost a year when the mountainside fell off. So they had taken a lot of efforts to erosion control that particular roadway. So just to keep you informed. The other letter I have here is I passed out to each council member, and I've had some meetings with the advocates about the Oroville City Fire Department issue and generated some issues for clarification. The bullet points are in a letter that I've attached. I've just added to my report. One of the things we found out that LAFCO, when this issue of the CAL FIRE proposal goes to LAFCO, they'll probably be, under state law, require a complete financial analysis. That is a separate thing that we'll probably have to pay for, and that's an estimate total. It could be from 70,000, it could be whatever. But those are numbers that I got from them. Not all, it's been previously stated that all employees would be hired that would stay here. They actually, state policy is only 50% of those hired would have the opportunity to stay here in this particular jurisdiction. So there would be a loss of institutional memory by the staff that would be switched over. And then there's other things that I have in this letter that we've talked about. I know with the letter intent moving forward initiates the CAL FIRE staff to begin the transition process. That's a cost, I understand, of about $90,000. So I think we should find out if we decide down the path that we choose not to do the CAL FIRE contract, is that something that we should reimburse the state for? Those are questions to be asked that seem reasonable. And then the other thing that you got to understand, that giving up the authority of hiring the fire chief certainly goes local, but it goes bigger than that, because the person that's locally appointed is hired by Chief Sharp, who is the CAL FIRE chief, who is appointed by the governor. So just to make it all upfront and realized, your fire chief will essentially be appointed by the governor's appointee for your jurisdiction. And then, of course, the Measure U money, there's a lot of talk about that. I'm running across a lot of people say that's what they voted for, to be spent locally. So just to be aware, there's a considerable amount of people that don't want to see that money going to the state of California. They see it going right here to the city of Oroville. And the other thing I would add, what you have is copies of the signature petitions that clearly were emotional and saw it at in front of a grocery store. And I know there was about 398 some signatures expressing support to keep the Oroville City Fire here. There's about 18 separate emails that came to city council members that I just copied. So the hard copy is aware, because sometimes we get city emails that are not all added to the record. And then there's 5 union letters in opposition to the idea that are attached to that packet. So I just want everybody to be informed and have the information about what's going on. The other thing is that I run across, everywhere I go, I get hit with, why are we doing this? I still have to ask the question, and it's not a debate tonight, it's just my report that why are we interested in spending $1.2 million more than we are today for the same level of service? So that's part of my report. And then just the fact that we don't have any public support for the issue. Just if it's out there, let me know about where it is, but there's just no public support for it. So thank you for the time. I appreciate it.
Councilmember Smith.
Yeah, this weekend I attended an event that was sponsored by the EAA, which is a organization that is here at our airport. If I'm correct on this, that the acronym is Experimental Aircraft Association. They've been here for many years here in our community, and this particular club provided tremendous value to our community, especially during disasters, and in particular the spillway disaster. I think everybody was probably pretty glued to Facebook watching several of those members who actually became somewhat famous, I think, and millions of views because of the images they were able to take from, of course, from the advantage of the air. And I just bring that for consideration. Going out there, they're trying to revitalize the association, reinvigorate our airport. You know, we think about just reinvigorating economic development and all of that. I would, and this is, I'm kind of segueing. I'm kind of doing two things here. I'm also wanting to put on the agenda a request that we have staff look for ways that we can support and reinvigorate this particular club that adds so much value to Oroville. I think that they're more than worthy of our support. And I have some copies here of how other cities do that. They, in support of like fly-ins, they would do discount fuel. They do other kinds of things to support this. But I think it's a good way to showcase our community. You know, these people are typically have pretty big footprints of impact in other communities. So I would like to ask, kind of report. They do great work. They did something at our airport. They're very heavily involved with our airport. And I just think they're worthy of greater support from the city. Thank you.
Anyone else? Moving on to future agenda items. Councilmember Riggs.
Thank you, Mayor Reynolds. I wanted to request, based on your recommendation earlier, the development plan from the two department heads overseeing code enforcement, with consideration of what the growth plan would be considering this grant funding and the long-term development for code enforcement. I really respect the suggestion that you had. I just want to see from the staff side and staff's perspective and current code enforcement officers what they see is really most effective for that department.
Anyone else? Moving on to administration reports. Mr. LeGrone.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I have one item that I'd like to discuss with the council just quickly and receive authorization from the council to sign a letter of support for equitable distribution of the federal COVID-19 financial assistance for customers of PUC regulated water suppliers. We had a meeting last week with some members from Cal Water, and one of the topics that we discussed was HR 133, which is a $638 million nationwide low-income household drinking water and wastewater emergency assistance program, and also HR 1319, the $1.9 trillion America Rescue Plan that President Biden signed into law last week. It also contains a component in there for relief funds to be equitably shared for CPUC water services and other utility services. What we're trying to do is we would like to write a letter or sign this letter, sending it to Governor Newsom, letting him know that we believe that this money should be equitably shared among all communities, regardless of whether you are a publicly held company or if you are a privately, or a government-owned company.
Municipality.
A municipality, thank you. I'm sorry. We're having trouble with some words here. What it currently stands to happen on this is that there is the possibility that customers that live within the Cal Water region would not be eligible for this funding because this is a publicly held company, this publicly held, publicly traded. So we just want to send a letter to the governor saying we believe that regardless of the company's status, whether it's a municipality or a publicly held company, that we support those that are in need of funding and support of the relief from the water or utility bills, that we think that this is what we should do.
And Mr. Agron has made it so that I need to recuse myself since I am associated with Paradise Irrigation District.
So it's his fault.
Yeah.
So what I'm looking for, and the reason why I didn't bring this to council in a staff report is because this came in after the agenda was out. Time is of the essence. It needs to be signed and delivered this week. It's just essentially telling the governor that we believe that all the citizens of Oroville should be treated equally regardless of who their water purveyor is, and that they can receive this assistance if they need it, or should at least be able to receive that assistance, not precluded because of the ownership status of a company.
Thank you.
So if there's no objection from the council, I'm going to sign this and send this in to the state. I will get you a copy for your mailboxes so you know what I have done, so you're well informed of this issue.
I wanted to comment on something you said.
Just I just would like to make sure that our state representatives also get a CC copy of that, so they're aware of what the situation is, because sometimes they don't hear this particular stuff, and I think it's an important, necessary need. So just add to the legislators.
Yes, sir.
Chief Deal, did you wish to make a report?
Mr. Mayor, if I could just cover one more thing while the chief walks up. One of the issues that we've been having with getting broadband into the industrial area of Oroville is crossing State Route 162, which is Orodam Boulevard. I got good news on that today after speaking at our leadership meeting this morning. Somebody will be trenching across that, so we are going to be installing a conduit underneath there at the same time while that trenching is occurring, and we will be able to get broadband into our industrial area, I hope within the next 6 months or so. So if we can get that trench open, we can get across that state highway.
A big conduit, not a little one, a big one.
Yes, we will expend the dollars necessary to put that empty conduit in so we can get across there.
I agree.
Thank you. Chief Deal.
Does somebody want to bring Tom back?
No.
So while Tom comes back, I appreciate the recognition for the juvenile justice. I must say that the recognition is, although I appreciate it, is more deserved towards both the lieutenants, Solano and Zarate. They're the ones that oversee those records and make sure that they're all correct prior to the inspection.
Duly noted. Thank you.
I think you guys all have this in your packet there. It's a one-page department report. On the top of it, it covers February. On the bottom half, we run year to date. We do these every month. I can show you any of the last ones if you so desire. Just to go through it, I don't need to read it all. If you have any questions on it, I can answer them. It's pretty short for that reason. February is a little bit shorter of a month than the rest, but there was a little over 2,600 calls for service in the police department. They wrote about a little bit over 300 reports, made over 100 arrests, and wrote over 40 citations. As far as hiring update for that department in the police side, last time I stood up here and spoke to you, I talked about the positions that were vacant and the plans to move forward, and I believe it was a few days before we did MLE interviews. We conducted those interviews, and we're putting 4 individuals into a background process this week for the vacant MLE positions. How they fare in that was yet to be determined. There's a police officer in the background process currently, and there's 1 police officer in the police academy. He's due to graduate in May, and as far as I know, he's well on his way to that. On the fire side, they responded to 466 calls for service in the 28 days in February. Again, we're moving through some promotions there to captain and lieutenant. Right now, today, we post the firefighter position on the city's website. There's 2 firefighter vacancies in the department. Those promotions that I just mentioned will clear the way for those 2 vacancies. We had already previously flown those positions. We've got some applications, but I want to increase the pool. So we're going to post it again. By the time we get done through the promotions, we'll be ready for those firefighters to interview and move forward with. The last thing on the fire side is I think it's important to note that they're averaging close to 500 calls a month. This is an increase due to the situation with El Medeo. The goal is to make the promotions, make the hirings so the overtime is reduced for them because they're working a significant amount, and they know we recognize it's appreciated, but it's time to do something different and hopefully reduce that for them. If there's no questions, that concludes the department report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Lando, welcome back.
Thank you. Very quickly, Mark Mendez, I think we're ready for the next agenda. We'll be talking about his plans for the gateway to see if it's acceptable to the council. At the same time, we have several other large developments which are kind of kicking tires, and most of the staff out here is working on. As soon as we get the municipal services review done and submitted, I think we'll see some annexations.
Thank you. Don with a W.
Hi there. Yes, Mr. Lando touched on the municipal services review. Once we receive the CAF back from for finance, then we can finish up that final chapter and we can submit that on to LAFCO. Staff is also working with the Downtown Business Association on beautification and enhancements to our historic downtown. This Friday at 9 a.m., staff is co-hosting the Arbor Day celebration at Poplar Avenue Elementary School in Thermalito. Staff will be planting trees out there for the celebration. With the Butte County rolling into the red tier or rolling back into the red tier, we can open our museums at 25% capacity. So we are going to be starting with one museum and rolling out our COVID procedures there, seeing how they work, and then rolling out another museum from there and there. So first will be the Boltz Antique Tool Museum. They will be open this Saturday from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. At 25% capacity. Also, the sewer line replacement project that's taking place on Table Mountain Boulevard, there has been a delay. Starting yesterday, they were supposed to be working 24 hours to be replacing that line. With the pending weather, they are moving that schedule to next Monday, the 22nd through Friday, the 26th. So we'll be, actually the press release went out today, and that's also been updated on our Facebook page. So thank you.
Thank you. If we can get 25% capacity at our museums, I would have a parade. Leo? Nothing? Mr. Attorney? Okay, well, with that, we're going to conclude our council meeting. We will meet again on April 6th, 2021 at 4 p.m. Meeting adjourned.